So self-confidence is the topic for today. And in that theme, kind of a crazy good episode. I'm not going to lie to you. This is probably one of the best episodes. I literally sat there afterwards and I was like, dang, God carried that conversation because that was amazing. That was good. That was some good stuff. And that's not me. That's all the Holy freaking Spirit working. Okay. And he's doing the work. And I just got to sit there, and I'm just so excited for you to hear this episode all about self-confidence, growing in that, stepping into your purpose, and really, really tangible steps on how to do that, like mindset shifts, all of that good stuff on really getting self-confident. And no, one of the steps is not going to be affirmations in the mirror. You know what I mean? Like we're not talking about those little things that if you actually did them, maybe it would help. Maybe if you did journal, it would help. All of that is great stuff, but this is really intentional, deep mindset shifts in order to genuinely become a more confident person. And I think you're going to love it. We talk a lot about what God says about confidence. We talk about how to get more confident and all of the things that you need to know when it comes to self-confidence. Okay. So if I say confidence one more time, I'm probably going to just like my tongue's going to fall off. So let's jump in because this is too much. Okay, so today we have a matcha, which we had a matcha last week, but I have a reason for this. I'm batch recording this episode. I don't tend to do this because I love to talk real time with you guys, but this week, so I'm home now by the time you guys are listening to this, but I was in Atlanta for my brother's wedding, which is so exciting. I am the best man. Okay. So funny story. I begged Drew for basically his entire life. I told him, I said, I will be your best man. I should be your best man, blah, blah, blah. And he had always told me no, like absolutely not. That's weird. All of that stuff. And, last Christmas, he ended up giving me a bracelet for my Christmas gift. And I had opened it and I was like, oh, it's so sweet. It had like a cute little like note in there about like something about being like a good sister or something. And I was like, oh, it's so sweet. I was like, oh, I'm getting teary eyed. And he was like saying something, but I was reading the notes, so I wasn't paying attention to what he said. But long story short, he was asking me to be his best man. Freaking bawled my eyes out. Haven't cried that hard in a very, very long time, but it was a great moment. And so I wrote my speech like 2 weeks after. I've had this speech written for so long, months. I've had my speech written for months. And I've always wanted to just like be so funny. Okay. I just feel like this is my time to shine. I'm never going to do stand-up comedy. It's not in the cards, right? But I do think that if I was going to do stand-up comedy, I actually think I'd be kind of good at it. I'm not going to lie to you. And like, I say funny things every once in a while. This is my time. So I'm not sure how, like, obviously I'm recording this before the wedding, so I'm hoping it goes well, but I'm pretty confident that it did. Because I've been practicing for a while and I'm really excited about it. It's just fantastic. So anyways, we had that. And then obviously everything that goes with it. We have so much family coming into town. My wedding got significantly smaller. You know, we were planning the whole 200-person big wedding. But then Matt and I obviously did like our mini like elopement kind of thing where we pushed the wedding so far forward that we got married on the day of our wedding shower 6 months before our actual wedding was supposed to happen. So it was brilliant. I loved every single moment of it. Would not change a single thing. It was the greatest thing ever. It was the most fun day. I look back on it with the sweetest memories, but I will say it has been super fun to kind of do like the whole big wedding thing now and just be a part of it. So like we're getting our makeup done and there's like a big rehearsal dinner and we're not really doing anything crazy for the bachelor party just because there's so many people traveling in and it's just not Drew's not really like that. So, that's a surprise. So why do I feel like I still can't say what we're doing? Even though we've already done it by the time this gets released, it's fine. Anyways, it's a surprise for him and it'll just be so fun. And then we're having a big barbecue the day after with all of the family that's traveled in from all across the United States. So very, very exciting. But because of that, batch recording this episode and still have the matcha from last week. So, you know, it's fine. It's good. It's whatever. But that means as far as life updates, yeah, I guess my brother's married now. That's crazy. So crazy to say. If you know Drew, I mean, we're not surprised, but it's crazy nonetheless. So all that being said, I wanted to do an episode on self-confidence. And I don't want this to be cheesy. This isn't meant to be cheesy, okay? This is just genuinely something that I have noticed such a change in my life recently. And it actually came from a conversation with my husband, and we were talking, and Matt said something about me being like so confident. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not confident at all. And he's like, yeah, you're probably one of the most confident people I've ever met. And I was like, okay, you clearly have not met a lot of people then. Like, what? There's no way. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I think I still hold myself to the standard that I viewed myself in, like when I was 16. And really, I'm not that person anymore, obviously. And I kind of am pretty confident. I am pretty confident in everything that I do. And I was really, really thinking about this. Like, what changed? What made me confident? And what made me able to grow in this way. I don't know. It's just hard to think about because it was a subtle enough change where I never realized that I am not the same person I was when I was 16. And now that I see that, I was like, wow, wait, this is crazy. Can I now label myself as a confident person? And I'm going to say I can. That's the confidence I have. Okay. Wild. So anyways, self-confidence is, can be called so many things like self-esteem, self-worth, like all of that. And there are so many emotional and psychological triggers for self-confidence and just ways that people view themselves or things that people have said about them that play into this. So everyone's experience with self-confidence is obviously extremely different. And there's no one size fits all, just like there's no one size fit all for literally anything that we ever talk about. But these practices can be applied to just everyday life. And I don't know, I also want to really look at this from a biblical lens. And so with that being said, I'm going to share just a few little verses with you that talk about why we can be self-confident, because there's a line that I think a lot of Christians get worried about blurring, which is the line between pride and confidence. Okay. But as much as we don't want to be prideful, in terms of thinking that everything we do is so great and ultimately everything is about us and we are the main characters, there is a line of confidence that God has bestowed upon us because we are sons and daughters of Him. We're made in His image. So to be made in the image of God and to not have confidence means that you are not honoring God. And I'm like, that sounds harsh, but I'm just like giving it to you so straight right now. If you choose to be unconfident in who you are, knowing that you are created in the image of God, you are doing a disservice, not just to yourself, but ultimately to the Creator. Okay. So couple verses. Here we go. Joshua 1:9, it says, "Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, because God is with you wherever you go." And ultimately, self-confidence comes from a place of courage. Additionally, Psalm 27:1 says, "The Lord is my light, whom shall I fear? The Lord is my stronghold, whom shall I be afraid of?" Again, talking about that courage. But the one I really want us to hit on, okay? The one I really want us to focus on is 2 Timothy 1:7, where it says, For the Spirit that God gave us does not make us timid, but it gives us power, love, and self-discipline." Okay? And I think I want to also just like make a very, very blanket statement that I'm not talking timidness like she's quiet or she's meek or she's humble. Like all of those are great things. But timidness meaning that you're not confident in who you are and you're not stepping into the purpose that you have been created for. When we are so consumed with being nervous about who we are and our confidence level, we are not pursuing what God has given us. And I'm going to be so honest with you. Low self-confidence is a form of pride. What I mean by that is when we think that everything relies on us doing everything ourselves, and whether we think we're going to do it really, really well or really, really poorly, we're focused on us. We're focused on one thing, ourselves. And when we're so focused on ourselves that we forget to see the bigger picture of the fact of you're called to a higher purpose, you're called to something bigger, of course, you're going to be prideful, even if it comes across as I'm less than. That's still a form of pride. You've got to be confident in the skills that God has given you, in the purpose He has called you to, and you've got to step into it with confidence. Okay. So how do we do that? I mean, that just sounds so good. But it's really hard. And one practice that I have really, really, really been leaning into is the idea that we don't have to be good at everything. We don't. I was listening to an audiobook called Big Magic, and it was talking about this person who, at the age of like 45, started ice skating again after her ice skating coach told her when she was 16 that she wouldn't make it to the Olympics. And so, knowing that she would not be an Olympian ice skater, she quit skating. So after being told that she would not go to the Olympics at 16 years old, she quit skating, because why would you continue to do something if you're not going to be the best? And that mentality plagues us all. Why would we do something if we're not going to be great? And so she started ice skating again at the age of 45. And that was just so mind-blowing to me, so impressive. And it kind of reminds me of this quote that I heard from Jay Shetty. Jay Shetty is kind of controversial right now, but it's fine. It's still a good quote. And it says that, like, if you're at the head of the class, you're in the wrong class. If you're the one who has all the answers, you're not gaining anything. You're not learning anything. And that kind of hit me. I was like, wow, am I surrounding myself with people that I'm at the head of the class with? Am I learning anything from the people around me? Am I learning anything from any of the books that I'm reading, the podcasts I'm listening? Am I bettering myself? And so when we think about that and that level of just where we are in life and where we're going and whether or not we're pushing our boundaries, that is going to be what helps us grow in confidence. We do not have to be the best at something in order to pursue something. And there's that quote that says, jack of all trades, but master of none. And like, I get it that I guess you should want to master what you're doing. And there is a sense of stewardship of wanting to be good at what you're doing, for sure. But if you're the best at what you're doing and you're never stepping out of your box, then you're limiting yourself, because there's so many other things around you that you could be trying and attempting and doing and learning about. And just because someone says you're not going to go to the Olympics doesn't mean that you have to just back out of that. Okay. So first of all, we need a massive, massive mindset shift. And this is something I still actively do. I do not want to be the best at what I'm doing, because if I'm the best, that means I'm done growing. And I can't accept that for myself. So I have really started to lean into the constant state of learning and being like, wow, I'm not the best at this. Thank goodness. When we become grateful that we're not the best, all of a sudden we're way more open to learning. So that's tip number 1. Okay. That's huge. And I think that's big in overcoming our self-doubt. Tip number 3 is the very common idea of, like, you spend your 20s and 30s being worried about what everyone else is thinking about you. Then you spend your 40s and 50s being like, I don't care what people think about me. And then you spend your 60s and 70s realizing that no one was thinking about you at all. Dang. Okay. And where that comes from is like this idea of, like, we are so consumed with what everyone else is going to perceive us as that we forget it does not matter, because you're not taking up time. Okay, let's be so honest right now. You're listening to this podcast. You're probably thinking a little bit about me right now just because you're hearing my voice. But as soon as this is over, you're not going to think about me again until I pop up on your feed, or until I text you, or until we have some sort of form of communication on this podcast next week. You're not thinking about me. And I'm going to be so honest with you. I'm not thinking about you that much either until we're doing our thing. When either I'm setting up for the podcast, or until I'm going to reach out to you, or until I'm going to send you an email, whatever that is. We're not constantly thinking about each other. And while that may sound kind of lonely, it is so freaking freeing. I'm not thinking about you. You're not thinking about me. We're okay. You're okay to do your thing today. We do not need to constantly be thinking about what everyone's thinking about us. We don't. 2 reasons. 1, if you think that I'm thinking negatively about you, you're judging me. Okay? Let me put this in perspective. If I'm sitting here and I am having a conversation with the barista and I see a Little bit of like a change in her face, like her facial expression changes a little bit. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she just heard what I said. She hates me. She thinks she hates Christians because I like said something about God, and she just despises me. She doesn't want anything to do with me. And I go down this rabbit hole. I am judging her for the thoughts that I'm perceiving she's having, when really she just remembered that she forgot to text her mom happy birthday yesterday, and she's going to be in some deep water. Do you hear what I'm saying? When you are so confident that you know the other person's thoughts, you're judging that other person. You are. And then we don't want to live that way. So if I don't want to be judged by other people, why would I judge them for what I think that they're thinking? That doesn't even make sense. So that's number one, as why we need to stop caring. Number two is, if you woke up tomorrow and no one else was on this world, what would you do? Like, you're not freaking out. Okay, let me say this. You were expecting this. You knew that everyone was leaving and like everyone left. Okay, so you're calm. You're fine. But like, what are you up to? Like, are you still doing what you're doing? Are you still pursuing the major that you're pursuing? Are you still doing the career that you're doing? Like what are you up to? Or is your entire life based on the fact that other people spoke into it? Other people told you what to do? I don't know. So I think in order for it to be self-confidence, we have to truthfully stop relying on other people, whether it's their positive words or their negative words. If their positive words build us up or their negative words tear us down. And that right there is going to help us rely more on who God says we are and our image in Him than it's going to rely on everyone else. And everyone else is so dang fickle. Right? Like, they're going to change their mind about you a million times, because again, they're only thinking about you for 30 seconds and then they move on and they're worried about themselves. So that's something for confidence. That's point number 2. Point number 3 is the whole celebration of successes and goals. Okay. I'm assuming you're a little bit like me, considering you're listening to this podcast, and pretty achiever orientated. I'm going to say, like, pretty like to-do list orientated in the very least, where you want to be marking things off. And when we are focused on our to-do lists, what happens, at least that I've noticed, is that we forget to celebrate the wins. We forget to just take a minute and be like, dang, I met that goal. We're good about setting the goals, and we might even be good at reaching the goals, but we're not good at celebrating the goals. And that was something that was definitely huge. So I did not go to my graduation for my master's, and it was like pulling teeth to get me to go to my graduation for my bachelor's degree. I was very upset. Matt wanted to go to his graduation. He wasn't able to because we had other commitments. But I remember being like, dude, just get over it. Like, it's fine. You don't need to be there. And I honestly, that was, a year and a half ago. Kind of regret that. That was my attitude, because it's a celebration. I mean, you did something really, really impressive. You spent years on something, and you deserve the ability to celebrate it instead of constantly having to chase after the next thing. And when we're always so forward focused, we forget to look back and look at all that we accomplished, and I always love when people are like, what would your 12-year-old self or whatever think if they saw you now? And sometimes probably monthly at my monthly meetings, I will ask myself that. And I'm like, okay, what is 12-year-old Belle thinking? Like, right now? What is 16-year-old Belle thinking? Honestly, what is freaking 18-year-old Belle thinking about where we are in life? And truthfully, I think they'd be pretty dang impressed. And I think that your younger self would be pretty dang impressed too. Even if it's not something that like is so crazy and you're a millionaire that drives a Ferrari now. Like, yeah, your 12-year-old self would be impressed with that. But would your 12-year-old self also be impressed that maybe you have better control of your anxiety, or that you are working at a job that you actually enjoy, or that you did complete a degree, or that you are working towards a class that you were just learning so much, like all of that, you know what I mean? I think there's little things that your younger self would be like, dang, that's pretty cool. I didn't know we would be able to do that. And we have to recognize those successes and celebrating those achievements. I mean, literally, no matter how small, whether it is the fact that we got an A on one specific quiz in class, or You graduated with a freaking dean's honor list, whatever. Is it the dean's list? I think it's the dean's list. I think I was on it too, but I don't really remember. So all of that will help boost your self-confidence when you're not living in the past, but reminding yourself of how far you've come. There is that line to walk. And, the greatest leaders, I'm going to say minds in general, have a telescope in one eye and a microscope in the other, where they're looking forward to the future, but they're also analyzing what's happening close and near, either past or present. And you've got to celebrate. You've got to really just be so stoked that you've done all the things that you've done. Next, learning from failure. Ooh, this is so freaking hard. It doesn't matter how many times people tell you, oh, you'll learn so much more from failure than you will from success. Or, oh, what was the famous Thomas Edison, I think it was, who had that famous quote where he was like, I didn't fail to create the light bulb 99 times. I just found 99 ways that the light bulb didn't work, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much content on failure out there. And truthfully, I had a very, very unhealthy perspective on failure. And I think there's a level of vulnerability that comes with failure. Like, you have to be able to look at it and go, shoot, that didn't work. But so many times I think failure is only scary because we think everyone's watching. So if you start working on your mindset shift as far as no one's watching you and releasing that pressure, and then exploring the relationship between the failure and the confidence that comes from failure and perseverance through setbacks, of course, that's going to be a confidence boost. So what's crazy is, what is 12-year-old you so excited that you did? But also, what is some failures that have just really hit? And you have to gain comfortability with your failures. You have to get comfortable with them. If you're only comfortable with your successes, then when failure comes, it's going to hit a lot harder and it's going to hurt a lot deeper. But as soon as you get comfortable with the fact that failure is A, inevitable, and B, just okay, it's okay, then it's not as scary when it happens to you. So I had a podcast before this one, right? And it was a total, complete, messy failure. I was all over the place with that podcast. I decided to start it at the age of 17. I started the podcast the week I moved from Chicago to college. So I moved from Illinois to college and I started a podcast that week. I was also starting college. I was literally like in the middle of a whole new community, massive life changes, and I decided to start a podcast. What was I thinking? And what was it called? Adventure for Jesus. That's what it was. And I had merch and I don't know if I had a website. I don't know. I did all this stuff and I was trying to do my custom logos and all this stuff. And I think I did maybe 8 episodes. They weren't good. I'm going to be so straight with you. They weren't good. I scripted out every single podcast episode. So I wrote verbatim what I was going to say. So it was writing a 20-page paper every single week. And then I just read it. Where guys, now I have notes on my phone for sure. I research things, but everything else is ad lib and it's more conversational. I don't know. I think I did 8 episodes and then it just crashed and burned and it was done. And I was supported by so many people and everything was so nice. I got 30 listens an episode, 30. And I thought, wow, this is great. This is it. And then I failed ultimately because I just stopped. I just stopped because I got overwhelmed and I failed to plan. I failed to execute and I failed in this longevity of that, right? So why is that important? Why I had to get so comfortable with reviewing why that podcast failed before I could start Inspired Lady. I had to get really, really intimate with all of those shortcomings and all of those setbacks in order to create the space that I have now where I get to talk to way more people and it's way more successful. It's way more fun. Let's be honest. And all of that. So this failure of a podcast was what led to the greatness that would come later. And I'm calling this podcast great because I think it's freaking great. And we are celebrating our success, which is this podcast. And there are so many things like that. There are so many conversations that I have epically failed at. I've epically failed at addressing certain issues or oversharing in certain moments. And that stinks. You know what else I failed at very recently? I created the Inspired Lady planners and I was like, these are going to sell out. These are going to be the most massive success. We sold 8. And you know what? I freaking love all 8 of you that have the Inspired Lady planner. I use my Inspired Lady planner all the time. But I'm right now going through, what did I do wrong? How did I fail at this? Like why, celebrating the 8 that were sold, but why did this not take off in a bigger way? What did I do? And you have to get intimate with your failures. And now, because I was so comfortable with my failing at other places, I was able to look at this planner and go, it's not that big of a deal. It's totally fine. No one really cares. No one's probably thought about this planner since I talked about it in October. That's okay. So get comfortable with the failure. That's a really big one. Hard one. Don't get me wrong, but a really, really important one. And lastly, I just think it's important to develop your skills. When we get comfortable with where we are as far as our skills go or how we handle certain techniques in our daily lives, whether it is professional, creatively, or just daily rituals, when we're comfortable with that and we stop pursuing growth, we become very just detached from what we're doing. And then more than that, we will not be confident in what we're doing. And I really noticed this in my 9-to-5. So I am the marketing lead. And I notice that when I am not actively trying to sharpen my skills, it is very hard for me in order to then be confident in what I'm doing. So I will, if I'm not learning something new, if I'm not sharpening, then I am putting out work that I'm like, oh, I think that's pretty good. I hope that's good. I'm just kind of winging it on this one. And of course, that's not giving me confidence. Of course, that's not something that's helping me feel like, wow, I'm doing this well. I'm stewarding this position well. But when I lean into growth and I look at either moments of failure as a moment of growth, or I look at different scenarios that are happening around me as moments of intense growth, and I'm constantly trying to refine the skills that we have in that moment, of course, I'm going to be more confident in what I'm doing. There are things that I do on my day-to-day basis right now that if you would have told me I was doing back in, 2018, I would have been like, what? How on earth do I know how to code a website? How on earth do I know how to, send that many HTML files? All of that has to come together because I was in a state of learning, and learning builds confidence. When you're refining skills, you're building confidence. So embrace it. Embrace the fact that you don't need to sit at the head of the class, or that you might not know everything, and then sit in that uncomfortability of past failures, learning from it, and then refine those skills, learn from those skills, and celebrate your successes. All of this will really, really intentionally help you with your self-confidence, with you embracing your identity as a daughter of God, and even further than stepping into the purpose that you were created for. Okay? It's vital. It's important. It's needed. And yes, all of those other tips of saying affirmations in the mirror and all of that, those are great. Those are so helpful. But these are deep work, intentional shifts in your mindset and your practices that will allow you to build up confidence to a point where you're going to not even recognize who you are anymore. And you're going to look back and be like, dang, when did I get so dang confident? When did this hit that I no longer have to be fearful to step into certain roles, or I no longer have to be fearful to speak out? I no longer have to be timid because I have a presence of strength and confidence, of discipline. It's a power that we hold, that we are given from our Creator. And you have the ability to step into that power. In fact, not just the ability, but you have the actual purpose, the intention of stepping into that power. Okay? Yay! I'm so glad we had this little conversation. I feel very inspired. I hope you feel very inspired. And I hope that this helps just slowly build up that self-confidence for you. It's not going to be a 24-hour light switch shift, whatever, where all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're so confident and you're just like going after it. It's going to be a little bit slower. It's taken me probably 3-ish years to get to the point where I feel like I can label myself a confident person. But luckily for you, it doesn't have to take that long because I just gave you all my tips. I just gave you how I got there from all the work. So anyways, I am so excited. You deserve to be as confident as possible because you're amazing and everyone should see that. So don't allow timidness or fear or any of that to hold you back. Be confident, be purposeful, and be your best abundant self.